Good afternoon. Today we are joined by Brett Gray with Cushman Wakefield, a global commercial real estate company, Mike Crippen with Solid Surface Care, a professional cleaning services company that specializes in surface cleaning, and Amber Brown, the market president for Charlotte and the Triad with Alfred Williams and Company, and they are a commercial furniture and interiors organization. Our topic of conversation today is what organizations, leaders, and teams need to be thinking about and preparing for it as they bring their teams back into the office environment after being home for this extended period of time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome, everyone. My name is Katie Hines. I am the Vice President of Business Recruitment with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. So Mike, let's start with you. From a cleaning perspective, a space perspective, and a mental and emotional health perspective, what should companies and leaders be thinking about as they re-enter the workforce so employees feel safe? And how is your company providing services to accommodate those needs?
Thanks, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here. That's an excellent question and something it's top of mind for us right now. This has been a scary time for all of us, and the prospect of reoccupying space and the uncertainties that come along with that will certainly make for a very emotional transition. At Solid, we've been focused primarily on delivering enhanced cleaning services and high efficacy disinfecting on both a preventative and an abatement basis. And we are now beginning to pivot as an organization towards strategic planning for reoccupation strategy. So for us, the keys are first and foremost, protect your people, right? Let's make sure that the folks that are coming back to work are in as safe and a healthy environment as they can possibly be. Secondly, alleviating their fears or the concerns that they have about coming back to work, making them as comfortable as possible. Obviously, we want to make sure that the facility is in as clean and healthy a state as it can possibly be. And then lastly, that we have ongoing plans set up to ensure that the health of that facility remains in place. So there's both a practical and an optical rationale for this. Clearly, the practical is if we can do everything we can to ensure that the space is clean and healthy, we significantly reduce the risk of infection and transmission. So that's obviously should be the first rationale. But there's clearly an optical one as well, and that is that we want to make sure that the people who occupy these facilities know that we've taken every step possible to make sure that their safe and health is taken into account, and that they can be comfortable getting back to a new normal at work and be productive in that process. Now, I can tell you that from somebody who's in the cleaning industry and has spent a lot of time doing this, there is a big psychic impact on being in a clean space. There's been many reports that show that worker morale and productivity can be directly tied to the physical appearance of the space. So clean does equal healthy in people's minds. And so there's nothing more impactful than walking into a space that is visibly more clean than it was before and that smells fresh and healthy. So specifically what we're doing is putting together assessments for our clients to determine kind of what their move back strategy looks like. Are they coming back all at once? Are they going to stage that process? Are there people going to be partitioned? Or they're going to be in similar workspaces as they were before? All of that will help us frame up the plan, the strategic plan that we'll put together. And that will include protocols for enhanced deep cleaning, high-level disinfecting, and also the certification and testing to ensure that the efficacy is what it should be, and then obviously reporting that back to the client. The last piece, which is a big one, is messaging. So how do we communicate to the folks within these facilities as they're coming back to work and once they're back to work about all the things that we're doing to make them safe? And so for us, that is taking the place of notification boards that we put strategically throughout facilities, desk tents, tent cards, lots of different email communications. And so that messaging piece becomes a very important and critical part of this. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. We're calling that phase one of the reoccupation stage.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Now I'd like to move on to Brett. Brett, can you tell us about Cushman and Wakeman's Recovery Readiness Task Force and all of the things that surround that initiative?
Certainly. First, thanks for having me on here, and for the Alliance for having me on today. Excited to be here. You mentioned our Recovery Readiness Task Force. I'll start there. It's really focused on helping both commercial landlords and tenants prepare for going back to work. So the goal of that task force is to develop best practices, products, and partnerships for the recovery process.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about the 6feetoffice.com social distancing program?
Certainly. We have a design and build business with in-house architects who focus on office design. They have developed a prototype design called 6 Feet Office, as you referenced, with our leadership in the Netherlands that we're currently piloting or testing in our Amsterdam office. So 6 Feet Office is a design layout that is inexpensive to implement, consists of ideas such as color carpet that creates visual boundaries around desk, plexiglass shields in between desks that face each other, and office signage that directs walking traffic in a single direction. As you noted, all these are on our website, 6feetoffice.com, and it's one of our new innovative products that we expect to share many more as our task force continues to create best practices.
And then in going back to the Recovery Readiness Task Force, can you talk about the toolkit that you are creating and how that has been used in China?
Certainly. Let me start with the China piece. We have a unique experience in post-COVID recovery. We've just finished moving 10,000 companies and nearly 1 million workers back into 800 million square feet of buildings we manage in China. So we developed a 300-page operating manual from that experience that we have and will use to create best practices in other regions. And one of the best practices from our experience in China is evaluating with our many experts in workplace design, facilities management, HVAC, cleaning, just to name a few, is a recovery readiness operating manual for landlords and tenants that is now available actually as of yesterday. Some examples from that operating manual include some of the points that Mike even referenced, but transportation options to and from work, as public transportation will be less popular, temperature checks at buildings front door and possibly in another company's reception lobby, PPE distribution at reception, elevator and escalator protocols, so physically limiting the number of people in elevators, rearranging office furniture and desks to adhere to strict social distancing protocols, and then using remote working technologies, staggering employee hours, and creating flexible work from home kind of culture to allow fewer people in the office at any given time. It's really specific cleaning and hygiene protocols that also Mike referenced as well. And then even what an employee should do if they feel unsafe because a worker is exhibiting symptoms.
And where can folks find that, the Recovery Readiness Guide?
So it's all on our website, cushmanwakefield.com. We've developed a COVID-19 portal on our homepage there. So click on that and all of our info, and we're posting stuff constantly related to this and updates that'll be forthcoming. We're all there. I know the media has picked up on it today as well in our operating manual, so you might have seen it out there already, but it's really a guide for the public. So please use, as you see fit, share with your colleagues. Our goal is really to ensure that everyone is practicing good health and good safety once health organizations deem that appropriate.
That's great. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Amber, now we will move to you. What are some of the questions and concerns that you're hearing from your customers? And what are commercial furniture and interiors companies, specifically Alfred Williams, doing and offering to help protect employees as they're moving back into their office spaces?
Hey, well, thank you for having me.
Sure.
So we deal with a lot of range of sizes of companies. So we work with corporate end user customers that have millions of square feet of real estate globally, also on a national basis. We also work with local businesses. So the range of questions and the things that people are thinking about is very interesting. Number one, and I think both Brett and Mike alluded to this, was how do I make my employees feel safe when they come back? What am I doing to safeguard their health? Some of the other questions I think that we're seeing is, what are those short-term things that I need to do today to prepare for my employees to work, return to work? But then they're shifting into what are those midterm and long-term strategies look like in the workplace. A lot of conversations around what are the protocols. Mike mentioned, I think both Brett and Mike mentioned, what are those physical barriers? So we've seen a lot of customers with requests, and I don't know if I would say request as much as just conversation and seeking out knowledge related to, does a physical barrier, what is the point? The point of it a lot of times is to give comfort to the employee. But then also, what are those visual cues when we get back to the workplace to reduce friction so that an employee knows what to do when they get back? When you talk about the short term, midterm, and long term, I think customers are looking very differently at that. And when you think about social distancing and how do you achieve if you're looking at that 6-foot radius, a lot of end users have moved in different directions, and the floor plate has been dramatically over the last 3 to 5 years. So you have a lot more amenity spaces to deal with. You have a lot more public spaces to deal with. So visual cues and making sure that you've created those protocols in that guidebook that gives your customer or gives your employees, what does that look like when I get back? And really reducing the friction. Brett alluded to, what do I do if an employee, if this happens, so some of those things that you can do in the physical workplace are really key. And what we're seeing a lot of is that everyone has their own journey and their own culture and their own way of dealing with that. And so thinking about how are they phasing in employees, and how do you start to let employees be a part of that. And a lot of what we've been discussing with our customers as they've reached out, and we've also been proactively having those conversations, is, are you asking your employees that question also? Because your employees, we can create an environment that we think is going to give them this sense of security, but I think part of that is also asking the employees, what is going to make them feel safe? So that's a lot of what we've been doing. The industry as a whole is grappling with a lot of things related to how do you deal with this, again, short, midterm, long term, and a lot of it is, in our situation, we're the Herman Miller dealer, and Herman Miller has been working in healthcare for 60 years. So while a lot of the things that are kind of coming into the workplace as far as infection control and dealing with that, we've been dealing with that for 60 years. Environment. So now some of those things coming into the workplace are becoming a lot more prevalent, and a lot of dialogue that I think in the long run will be very positive for the future.
And Brad, I think that you had mentioned too, when we spoke previously, about having one-way walkways through office spaces. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think by having, one way to walk around an office, it just eliminates the collisions, eliminates people walking by each other. So, there's going to be things that offices can and can't do. We put kind of really a collection of ideas around it. And then I think, the different cultures, the different setups, things like that will have to be, be different for each office and each company around the nation. So, but we think it's a best practice if you can implement it. Many of us don't have the wide walkways, for example, in our office, that really ever allow a two-way walking path that wouldn't create some potential risk. So that was an idea that we came out with.
Yeah, and Amber, what do those barriers look like? Are they a barrier that's in addition to a cube? Does it go up higher than the cube, or what does that look like?
Great question. There's a lot of dialogue and a lot of I would just say chatter and clutter around what those barriers look like. you know, in a lot of cases, I think there's still a gathering amount of research around the infection and controlling the infection. There's still a lot of questions. And so I think as everyone starts to come up with what those barriers look like, you know, relying a little bit on the public health sector to guide what proper barriers would be, you know, because there's been a lot of conversation about where does the virus live, and, you know, does it live in, you know, cardboard, you know, is it plexiglass, what is it? We've seen a lot of things, but still, you know, I think balancing out the research that goes behind what those barriers look like. But most of what we're seeing right now, and at least the requests have been, you know, something that kind of gives the sense of a security, you know, more than maybe what they have now. You know, and again, kind of getting back to that, some of these feel like short term, so balancing out the investments of those with the security of the employee, and then what does the long-term workplace strategy look like for, and I think a lot of companies are evaluating that right now. I think it's about focused on how do we get people back to work, but then how do you start to implement maybe some strategies in the future that look a little different.
Okay. And Mike, are you getting calls from companies saying we want our space totally disinfected before we come back to work? And how does that conversation go, and what does that look like?
Great question. Thank you, Katie. We're getting calls from every direction. We have many clients across the country that we provide regular maintenance services for. They are asking us for help creating the strategy around reoccupation and what the protocols will be. As I mentioned, we have been proactively disinfecting within many of our client facilities that are still open today. And we've been getting a tremendous amount, I wish that were not the case, but a tremendous amount of abatement services across the country. So those are kind of the two different levels of what we're seeing. Mostly what we're saying is have a plan, right? The most important thing, I think, is understand what you are trying to achieve when your folks come back to work. Both Brett and Amber mentioned culture. I think that's a huge part of it. I think one of the things that's going to come under a lot of stress as we move forward is what do the cultures of organizations look like with the advent of social distancing. I can tell you, and culture is very strong in my organization. I want my people back to work because I think that we thrive when we're together. But finding the smart and healthy and responsible way of handling that is key. So really what we're doing is enhancing the frequency and intensity of the cleaning that we're doing, and that's for surfaces primarily, and that's, you know, carpet and resilient floors and all kinds of hard surface floors and vertical surfaces and metal surfaces. And so increasing the frequency with which we're cleaning those, cleaning them more intensely, and then layering on high efficacy disinfecting. And that's well above and beyond wipe down kind of disinfecting, but this is electrostatic spraying and fogging that will have true efficacy in killing the virus on contact. There's huge, as you can imagine, huge advancements happening at rapid pace for the kind of chemistries that are out there and the kill time associated with them. That's the issue right now, is most of the EPA certified chemicals have a very short kill time. And so everyone's looking for the silver bullet of the thing that'll kill for 90 days. It doesn't exist, unfortunately, today. But I think you're going to see more of that coming into the space.
Right, and a little bit of what you talked about is a great transition into my next question. Can each of you talk about your own organization or other organizations that you've heard about, and what you're doing to be proactive to start transitioning your employees back into the workplace for the first 30 to 60 days? And what does that transition look like for your company personally or others that you have talked to?
Yeah, Katie, I'll be happy to start on that. Let me just talk about what we're seeing kind of in general without getting into specific companies, because I do think that's an evolution that will continue to change as we find updates from the governor and the health organizations, to name a few. And so I think we'll see an evolution of this where we're learning more from places like China, and other countries who came before this with impacts from the virus. But, will companies kind of go back to work? Will they use less space? Yeah, I think some will. Most won't, use less space. I mean, one could argue that companies may need more space to accomplish social distancing in the workplace. Well, other, found over the past few weeks that certain functions like HR, as an example, may not need to be performed in the future, in the office in the future. So I think around the world, companies have seen, thinking and innovating around remote working and technology, that's happened, advancing more now than in the last 4 weeks, over the last 4 weeks than it has in the past 10 years. So this event is binary in that regard. Either your company has implemented a technology to have a productive virtual workforce, or it has not. Those that are running business close to as usual, and those that will not, will need to implement these technologies, or they could be at risk. So companies that invest in cloud-based operations, Workday, HR and finance, Skype for Business, are finding remote working easier than those who not have access to those technologies. So in the end, I think you'll see that be a driving force in how companies respond. I think companies will not necessarily use less space. But I do think one thing's for sure is we'll all be using our space differently than we have in the past.
Great answer. I know that our organization has found the work from home, I think, much easier than we thought it would be too. It's gone pretty well. Amber, do you want to address that question?
I'll echo a lot of what Brett said. And so for us personally, and we're actually, we're developing our plan kind of simultaneously while we're doing the same with our customers. And some of the things that, we're talking about here, we are afforded that we have a lot of real estate because we're a showroom that we can actually disperse our staff. But we are looking at different ways to orient our teams just through their physical work point. And then we're also thinking about how our teams interact and work together. And are there ways for us to orient those teams closer together so that they do have less of those serendipitous interactions with, we want that we're a collaborative industry, but, just in a kind of a short term looking at that. We also use a technology platform that is a full floor plate censoring. So we do know when folks are sitting, we don't know the person, but we know that their desks are occupied, and there's a light that's on there that we can turn the light on or off, so we can tell people they can't sit there that day, so we can achieve. And we have several of our customers that have that same technology that are considering that as a way to manage, again, removing that friction, because it is a visual cue. The light is red, don't sit there. The light is green, it's okay to sit there. So some of those things like that, and then also being able to manage the occupancy so we know when heavy times are. And we have this in our space, but it also helps us with our cleaning to know what are those times and where have those heavy spaces been used, so that we might need to put a little bit more energy and attention around that. And so those are some of the things that we're doing. We're doing a lot of change communication. We've already started. As I said, we're surveying our employees. We're doing the same with our clients and encouraging them to have those conversations. So that helps us, that starts the change communication. As this all started back in January, February, we had already started talking about it and having leadership calls. So we were really trying to be proactive and giving our teams a lot of information, as I think most companies have during this downtime. So making sure that we continue that communication as we move back into the workplace, and that we don't let off the gas as we continue to move through this for the foreseeable several months. So those are some of the things that we're doing and that we're seeing with our customers.
Great. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
I think they've done a great job covering it. I think we're doing a lot of the same things. We are an essential, I've always considered us an essential business, but now we actually fit the definition. And so we've been working with reduced staffs at all of our sites nationally as we've been continuing in business and delivering these services. Some of the things that we've done differently and will contemplate doing differently as we move forward is obviously as a disinfecting organization, we've been disinfecting all of our sites daily, all of our vehicles pre and post shift. We've been creating a lot of training internally about all of the safety protocols that we had in place, but we've augmented and enhanced as we've gone through the process. I think Amber mentioned communication, that one of the biggest things that we're focusing on is making sure that our people are aware of what exactly is going on, so they feel safe and informed. making sure that they have all of the resources that we can give them in the insurance and employment law arena, because we have had to furlough some folks. But in general, it is, back to what the new normal is going to be. I'm wanting to get our people back just as quick as the state and federal guidelines allow for it. I do believe that we'll have portions of our staff that may not work in the office moving forward, or may work less in the office moving forward. But I, for one, am a big fan of what goes on with the collaboration and interpersonal activity within organizations. And I certainly hope that we will see that staying primarily intact.
Great. And while you have the floor, very quickly, if each of you can go through, I know that each of your websites have a COVID-19 information page, or 2 or 3 on them. If you, starting with Mike, if you can just give us your website so people can go there and reference in regards to what you talked about today.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. We're www.solidcare.com. We do have a COVID site, COVID specific site. We've been doing a lot of webinars nationally, and so those live there as well. Some good information there. We'd welcome you coming on and taking a look.
Very good. And Brett?
Sure. www.cushmanwakefield.com, and right at the top, the first thing you'll see on that page is the COVID-19 link to click on, where we'll compile our info and centralize it for us and for our clients.
Very good. And Amber?
Yes, it's alfredwilliams.com. And you can click on there, and you can also get to our manufacturer, which is hermanmiller.com, who has a lot of information under COVID-19 new normal.
Very good. Well, I want to give a big thanks today for our guests for their leadership and taking time out of your busy schedules and offering your expertise. Brett Gray with Cushman Wakefield, Mike Crippen with Solid Surface Care, and Amber Brown with Alfred Williams and Company. Hopefully this conversation has helped to put some minds at ease in regards to re-entering the workforce. Thanks to all of you for serving our community and helping us get back to work when the time comes. For more information on the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance COVID-19 resource portal, please go to charlotteregion.com. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.